Welcome back to KathysRight.com. Today is part 2 of our series, Talking with Terri. Welcome, Terri. She's an educator, public speaker, and a dear friend. I think we share those common things, and I think that we did, I think, the best we could, and and from what we knew, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I stayed home with them. I don't regret that.
Aren't you
Really,
so thankful?
yeah, I'm grateful for that. I feel that a lot of kids are not getting a lot of time with their parents now. That's one of the things that bothers me about the Democratic Party also is now they want to say, oh, we want the kids in school from, preschool. So they want them from 3 years old now till 18 years old, more than 8 hours a day.
And I think we know why. And I really believe that's why. I think it's the more time to indoctrinate. I'm sorry, I do. I think
no, I go there. When I talk, I go there. I'm not afraid. I refuse to be politically correct anymore. I'm done.
Yeah, I can't be either. I just can't. I'm tired. I think, you know what I think? I think that we've tried as Christians, at least I'm speaking for myself, and I shouldn't speak for you, but and we were talking a little bit about this before the recording, that there's a fine line with, like, you think as a Christian that if you stand up for yourself or you don't say what you believe, that you're not being Christ-like, you're not being kind. And I've realized now, I was like, you know what, I think that's why I think a lot of Christians have kind of fallen into that belief system like I did. And
so did I for a while. Sure.
So, yeah. And so we've allowed them to run roughshod.
Yes, over us.
So much ground. And it's time to just say, no, we're going to take back. Yeah.
Well,
don't
we
you
didn't
feel
want to, also, we come from our parents at least came from a different time where you don't talk about politics and religion. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing the ramifications of that. Maybe we should have, maybe we should have been talking about, we should have learned how to talk about politics and religion rather than avoiding the subject altogether, because the Democrats are being obnoxiously loud about politics and religion. They're anti-religion and they're anti-people as far as Americans are concerned. They want this globalist thing. And I think that now the silent majority has to speak up and we have to be louder. Now we're smarter than them, which I know for sure. So we can outsmart some thugs on the street. I'm just totally, the mayor, Ted Wheeler of Portland, that man should be drawn and quartered. I don't understand how anybody elected him they're liberals. That's why I don't even know I'm asking myself that. But yeah, that guy he was like, I'm on your side. And this is what the same people in New York, when the shop owner, the people were throwing bricks through his window, he's like yelling through the window, but I'm on your side. I'm on your side. They don't care.
They don't care. They don't care. They don't care. And, we've seen that too. And you know what, my mom and I really honestly wonder this, because Colorado, growing up, I grew up in Boulder, which is a very liberal town. Boulder always has been. It's always been like 20 years ahead of its time. It's, CU's there. And I can't believe my dad wound up in Boulder, because he was so not Boulder. It's your son lives in Boulder.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah, my brother still lives there, but we grew up there, and it always has been liberal. Like every single friend I had from high school has blocked me on Facebook because they're so liberal. And
I don't care. I don't care if they block me.
I don't care. I could care less now.
You have to tell the truth and be okay with that, because if we really love our neighbor like we're supposed to, then we're going to love them into truth. We're not going to.
We realize that's love. That's true love.
That's
true love. Loves you enough to tell you the truth, because we don't want you to go to hell. We want you to be saved.
Yes.
But Colorado, Kathy, it was not a liberal state. It really was not. And I mean, there's some places, like some of the ski resorts and like Denver and Boulder and whatnot, those places were liberal. but Colorado in general was very conservative. And we're wondering, we are this huge state for mail-in voting.
Ugh,
And honest to God, I started thinking, I'll bet you anything that the reason why it's turned blue
right.
is the mail-in voting, because they're cheating.
Of course they're cheating.
Well, yeah, and we thought that, because I'm looking around and I'm like, what the heck? There are so many conservative people still here. Like last election, you couldn't find a Hillary sign. They were all Trump signs. And so how did Hillary win like so much in our state? And that was even in Denver, where it's supposed to be more, liberal.
I maintain that the Democrat Party is the advocate of Satan,
Oh,
because
I believe that completely.
they're the advocate of Satan. I talked about it earlier on my other show. I was saying that, basically, when you're talking to somebody and we're giving them facts and giving them truth, and they go, well, let me be the devil's advocate. I'm like, don't you think he has enough of those?
Yeah,
He's got
I'm
plenty.
going to remember that.
He doesn't need you. He doesn't need anybody. He's got too many advocates, in fact. So the thing is, I think that when you're talking about being pro-death,
Yeah.
Abortion, I can't understand it. The party that claims to love science doesn't. Science is
They
just
ignore
shut
it.
down
Yeah,
when
they
it
ignore
comes to
science.
abortion. I mean, really,
Yeah.
that is the most scientifically proven thing ever. And now we've even got 3D ultrasounds.
Right.
It's so
I,
beautiful to
I
see
don't
that.
think you can, I don't think you can be like, I think there was a time when you actually could be deceived. Like, because I remember when I was in high school, I remember kids really weren't sure. Like you could pass off that it was a compass cells. Like I didn't believe that, but I know that when I was in high school, people we didn't have the kind of technology that we have today. But now, honestly, I struggle to believe that people don't know
I struggle to
because
believe
of all
that
the
too.
science. Yeah, and I think we're at a time now where I don't think that you can, and like you were talking about that the Democratic Party is a party of Satan, and think of their convention. I mean, they had the star of, what is it, the pentagram star,
I didn't
like
see
for their logo. And I heard a lady, I was actually really encouraged, this woman on this talk show, and she was a Democrat. She said, I've been a Democrat my whole life. And she said, but I can tell you that this last convention, she said, I watched the Democratic convention. And then she said, I watched the RNC, I watched the Republicans convention. And she said, I am now swinging 100% conservative. She said, because what I saw, the difference of what I saw from, the DNC to the RNC conventions,
Mhm.
she said it was so unbelievable. She said, for the first time in years, I've actually had hope for our country. And I thought that was beautiful. I was like, dear
I did.
Jesus, please, say that convention, which I could go on for years about that convention,
That
was
was an awesome convention. I was so proud to be a Republican when I was watching it.
wasn't it just like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was at some beautiful retreat.
That guy who got up from the wheelchair, I cried.
I it was just, and then at the end
Flag
when they
there,
sang
and I'm
Ave
like,
Maria,
I'm
yeah,
so tired of people desecrating the flag. And I'm like, when he did that and he was standing there in the flag behind, I was like, thank you, God, because, I'm really tired. I remember my father teaching me how to fold a flag because he served in the Korean War. And my grandfather served in World War II. And I
that's awesome.
remember him teaching me how to properly fold the
Yeah.
flag and how you never let it touch the ground. And what I'm seeing today, uh, it turns my stomach.
It makes me so ill, and I'm kind of bad because I'm very careful as a teacher, because I am so upset when liberal teachers push their bias on my kids. I've been
Oh yeah.
extremely upset about it, and it's wrong. And so I try to honestly to be as strong as I am in my convictions. I don't, you won't know, like kids will ask me, they try to get it out of me, who do you vote for? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, but now they all look it up on Google, and it's like they found out, like, we know who you're voting for. I was kind of upset over that, by the way. But anyway, there's no privacy. But
There's
and
no privacy anymore.
no, and the only reason I care in the classroom is because I don't feel that that is my place. I feel that that's the parent's job, and I don't want to be. I it's not my job as a teacher to that is your job as your parent to mold and form your child in the way that you want to. So, but anyway, when kids don't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, or they are messing around, that's like push my buttons. They're like, don't push Miss Dillon's buttons. If you mess around with the pledge, you're going to push your buttons. And they do.
If it were me, you will stand up, or you
will, and you will be respectful, and you will say it with respect and honor. Yeah.
Because if that's the way the world becomes totally, who will fight for us when the enemies come? Who will fight for us if we have no respect for our own country? Who will fight for us? Because the wars happen. As long as men have been alive, there's always a war. Cain and Abel started it.
I know, way back.
Yeah. It's just, I remember my kids went to Catholic preschool, kindergarten, but before we moved out to the country. But what I remember was, I think her name was Miss McClurg. I might have that wrong. But anyways, her husband was the chief of police. And she was very, very anti-gun. She was the head of the preschool part of the school. And she was very anti-gun. And she goes, I won't let my husband even bring the gun in the house. He has to leave it in the camper outside, and lock it away inside of the camper away from, because she didn't want her kids exposed to guns. She never let her kids watch TV, movies, or anything with guns, because she was so anti-gun.
Oh my goodness.
And she told me, she goes, Kathy, all the work that I did, my boys would still pick up a stick and pretend it's a gun.
They're peanut butter sandwiches. Little boys will chew the peanut butter sandwich. And it was hilarious because I grew up with hunting, and my dad was an amazing sportsman. And I just grew up with it. We had guns around, and we just knew not to touch them. We grew up with respect for them because was there.
Gun safety, you learn that before you learn how to aim.
Anything, right? And so with my boys, when I have 3 boys, and when they were growing up, they had lots of toy guns. And before they even had one, though, I kid you not, my son would chew it with his peanut butter sandwich. He'd chew the gun. But I had this one friend that from my kids were at Catholic school too, and she would bring her boys over to play, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, your house is full of artillery," because we had to. But the funny thing is, though, Kathy, is the kids that weren't allowed to play with the toy guns were completely obsessed with them.
Oh, I bet.
And then they were really like kind of naughty with them. They hadn't learned, like, okay, this is how you play with the toy gun, even because my dad would be, it's a toy gun, whatever, no matter what it is, other than if you're playing, my boys would play army and airsoft and whatever.
I think gun safety is really, I grew up in the South, and so everyone had guns. Back when I was growing up, it was very common to have somebody with a truck with their gun hanging in the window.
Right, that was just normal life.
Yeah, and we rode in the back of the truck before seatbelts. We made paper
too.
And threw them out the back.
We used to ride did you ride in the back of the pickup truck? Like
plenty of times.
Yeah, we would like ride all the way to Durango, which is like an 8-hour drive, in the back of that truck. And I'd wonder why, I don't know how we didn't die growing up. Anyway.
Somehow we all survived. But I remember those days. And, but yeah, that was, I remember that. Because, I go to Louisiana every summer. And, all my life, we're a Creole family. And I thought we were French Creole. Come to find out we were actually Irish Creole.
Oh, I love it, because I'm Irish too. Yeah.
Well, you're my people now. Because I had no idea. I had to ask my mom, because we speak French. We're
and you speak it beautifully. I heard you last time. I was like, oh my gosh, Kathy, you sound like you're from France.
Get me around some Frenchmen, then I will sound like right now my accent is terrible. But it is really, it's sort of funny, because when I did the DNA thing, my daughter sent me that kit for Christmas. I was really kind of upset. I was like, what do you mean? I go to France. Every time I go to Europe, I go to France.
I can't. And do you know my son Jackson, my second oldest, he really had such a natural gifting for art as well. He was amazing. Like, he literally it was not taught. It was, which I'm sure you relate to. He just could do the art, and it's actually kind of sad. He got Lyme disease. I think I told you that last
A
time.
little bit.
When he was about, I think he was in eighth. Well, I know he was in eighth grade, and it caused him to. I mean, he had it so severe, Kathy. His hands, when he was in his worst with Lyme, he looked like a 90-year-old man. With arthritis, and like when we went to Children's Hospital, they like everybody, the whole team came to see this kid that was
I didn't
so.
know that was one of the
Oh God.
symptoms.
Well, it
What does
manifests
Lyme disease
differently.
do?
It's hideous. I'll tell you, it's Satan. But we didn't know what it was for years, and that's the biggest problem with it, is that it manifests differently in certain people. And there's some kind of weird. I know this sounds wacko, but honest to God, there is some kind of weird political. It makes me think of COVID a little bit. There's like this weird, like political bend with Lyme disease in the state of Colorado, because Jackson, we didn't know what he had and what it looked like. Finally, he got misdiagnosed. They diagnosed him with something called urticarial vasculitis. Well, I knew that wasn't it because I started studying, and he was getting sicker on the medicine. And I found out you couldn't even diagnose it unless you had a biopsy. Well, they'd never biopsied him. And so I finally demanded this doctor. I said, you need to biopsy my son, or you're not treating him anymore. And he did biopsy him. And of course it wasn't that. And then they didn't know what it was. So they just kind of slapped a label of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which is actually really common. But with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, if you truly have it, you were going to have shown symptoms when you were younger. It's not just going to come on literally overnight. Because Jackson's, honest to God, you had this kid that was the most agile, like flexible kid that, you know, and I mean, he used to run on all fours, and he called himself a cheetah, and there was nothing wrong with him. There was no sign of anything. And literally within 24 hours, Jackson said he was sitting there on the computer, and he felt his hands start to swell overnight, and he was never the same. And then the next day he got these hives that were like, I mean, it was like something you can't imagine. It was like a freak show. And we spent years, you know, in and out of the doctors and on prednisone and trying to, you know, allergy testing, because we didn't realize it. And then I got tipped off by a doctor that it could be Lyme disease. This doctor in Boulder who actually had Lyme disease. But the thing is he had lost his license for treating people with Lyme, because the treatment is controversial in the fact that you have to do hyperdoses of antibiotics. And so a lot of doctors won't, they won't go along with it because of that. And so this doctor actually had lost his license treating people for Lyme, even though he had had it himself. And they will tell you that it does not exist in the state of Colorado. And I'm like, that's interesting. So the ticks know not to cross the border. Okay.
The radicalization of our medical.
Yes. Oh,
yes.
You can't imagine it. And so this doctor was so from God, because he told me, he said, this is what you need to do. I'm going to order a blood test. You're going to send his blood back to this place back east where they actually do a legitimate Lyme test. Because he said in the state of Colorado, they won't even do a legitimate Lyme test. They will only rule out false positives. So I sent Jackson's blood work back. It came back glaring with Lyme disease. And I told a disease specialist at Children's Hospital, I said, my son had a positive Lyme test. And this lady, I am not kidding you, she literally, I wish I was exaggerating. She almost attacked me. Literally, like physically came up to me and said, don't you ever say that in this hospital again. Lyme does not exist. And I was like, this is weird. Like, what?
Sounds like the COVID thing. It does.
It does. There's something weird about Lyme disease. And so this doctor in Boulder said, I can't treat him now, but he recommended me to this doctor, and I'll say his name online because if there's so many people suffering from Lyme. But he's at the Sound Clinic in Colorado. His name is Dr. Naylor. And within 3 years, he is he's a DO. And so, but he does naturopath with the traditional medicine. So he did both. And Jackson, within 3 years, finally, after real intense treatment, he's got his life back, which you would have never known. You would have thought, there were so many nights I'd wake up and just sleep by Jackson because I think my child's going to die because he was so
Oh,
sick. He couldn't
to watch
walk.
your child suffer is the most painful
It's
thing.
horrible. Like I can't think back on it now. Like it almost feels like a dream because you know how God kind of protects your mind to
So
not think
I
about
bet you really identify with Mary then.
it. Well, you know, the lady, Our Lady of Sorrows, I have such a
Yes.
devotion to her, and
Yes.
I, Mom, I always say Mama. Sorry, I just say Mama. You understand because she does. You know, she knows. But anyway, the reason I got off with it with Jackson is ever since then, even though he's better with Lyme, he just said, you know, Mom, as much as I used to love to draw, ever since I was so sick, it's like it took away my love of drawing, and I don't even enjoy it anymore. Is that weird? And so it's kind of sad because he did have such a natural talent, but it's okay. You know,
It
he's
could
going to
come
do great.
back. Mine came back. I lost my ability to do art for years. Um, I, I had gone through a depression and they put me on antidepressants. And I was on them for a while and it got to a point where I wasn't feeling anything. You know, I wasn't feeling sad, but I also wasn't feeling joy.
So just say effective. Yeah.
Yes, and I knew that I didn't need them anymore. And no matter what I would say to my doctor, they kept giving me more and saying you have to take these, you know. And I'm
Uh,
like, but I don't have any problems. And I'm not, you know, but the reason you're not depressed is because you're taking the medicine, they would tell me. So finally, I just knew it wasn't working for me. I hadn't painted, I hadn't done any of the things I love doing. And even Terri, even the Holy Spirit, I was not being able to be in touch with the Holy Spirit. I remember that because before I would always go to church and I would you know, I would cry when I get the Eucharist. I would, I felt
oh,
everything, you know, everything. And I felt so loved by God. And it got to be where I would go to mass and I didn't feel anything.
that's not good.
It was
Yeah.
not, that's how I knew it wasn't good. And
Yeah.
so somebody told me about this nurse practitioner that I could go to that maybe it was hormonal, and it turned out it was. And he weaned me because I had to have an early hysterectomy because I was hemorrhaging, and
Mm.
so he said and they didn't replace it with hormones, and so it was just really all hormonal. It was I was not just depressed; it was all hormonal,
All
and
those darn hormones.
I know. But the
uh,
thing is, they had me convinced that I had to take these things that took away my joy, and
oh, Kathy, I hate to hear
that I
that.
would have to take that the rest of my life. I'm wondering if these people on the streets who are destroying things, maybe they're going off the drugs because those I went through some withdrawals. When you go off of it, they say, "Oh, you're not addicted to it." Oh, yes, you are. I
Oh,
went through withdrawals, but yeah, there was a time that I actually needed them because I was depressed and it was weird depressed. But
yeah.
after I got off of the antidepressants, my art came back. I mean,
Oh, that's so
it
awesome,
was
Kathy. That's
amazing. I
beautiful.
started writing, I started painting, I started doing. It was like an explosion of creativity, and that's what those medicines took away from me. And so I don't disrecommend them for people because there's an actual need, but
Right.
I think it's a mistake for doctors to make you feel like you have to take them for the rest of your life.
I do too. And that you would hope that the hope is that you could, you know, if you take them, that it's for a time. And that's what I liked so much about Jackson's doctor, the DO, is that he's in the business of healing. He's not in the business of putting a Band-Aid. He's the most amazing doctor I've ever met. And I hope my son will, you know, adopt some of the things that he's done because he really, and he's so busy. I mean, now you have to wait like 9 months to get into with him because
Well,
people want to go
same
to
with
him.
Frances, who she's a nurse
Yeah.
practitioner. I had to wait 6 months, but a friend of mine pushed it up for me because she'd been with him for a long time. But he figured it out really quick.
That's such a blessing. That's so good from God. Yeah.
Yes, and God didn't mean for me to take those for the rest of my life. But like I said, you know, there are people who may be suicidal or something that may need that Band-Aid for that moment until they
Right.
get through something. But I really think that people need, I think it's because I had the avenue of Jesus Christ. I was going to daily mass, even though I wasn't feeling anything, you know, and this really is a lesson that I learned. I don't want to be on anything for the rest of my life, you know?
I feel the same way as you. I think that all the time. That's why I think I've told you, I know I've told you before, but I have celiac disease. And that's the one thing that I'm very grateful about it is, I think, yeah, it's kind of I guess it can be a nuisance. I'm so used to it now. It's just normal. It's a way of life with
So you
food and
can't
stuff.
have wheat?
I, I can't have wheat, oats, barley. They say I can have barley. I can't actually have barley. And there's some other foods I can't have. Like I can't have sugar. I can't have, I'm not supposed to have dairy, but I do have dairy sometimes. And then I end up in trouble. But sugar, I can't have yeast.
Wow.
What else can I have? I can have pretty much everything else, but not wheat or gluten. But
So no bread?
no, but I make my own bread. My kids are like, Mom, we're gonna die if we. They're like, your bread is so disgusting. They just think it's horrible, and it's hilarious because I make pancakes with my bread. I make my bread, and I absolutely love my bread. Like I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I started making this pumpkin bread that, oh my gosh, I think it's to die for good. But I'll bring it to school, and kids are like, are you eating a hamburger patty? I'm like, no, it's my bread. Yeah, my food looks weird. Students are always like, what are you eating? They like look at me. It does look different. I don't think about it. It's just normal. But I'm grateful I don't have to be on meds because I'm with you. I don't want to be dependent on anything.
I don't want to
But
be
I'm dependent on coffee. I am on coffee. Yeah.
that was the first thing that I thought when they had what was going on in Paris? Oh, they had some kind of explosion. They were bombing the terrorists, and you saw people running, and people were terrified, and they had to like close themselves down, kind of like COVID, the China flu or whatever. And so, and my first thought was, gosh, I hope they have enough medicine at home because they're going to be screwed if they, if they have to just go off of it.
Well, haven't you thought about that? I've thought about that sometimes. I was like, now God, if we have to like go into hiding ever, because we never know what's coming.
You don't.
You know what I mean? We don't. I'm like, so could you like make sure that I have like gluten-free food because I don't want to be sick, And then I think,
yeah.
That I do think about that sometimes.
Yeah, and there's lots of people who are dependent on things that are just normal, food and beverages, which makes me really mad about this closing down of everything. Because I can go to Costco, my favorite store. I can go anywhere, and that's fine with a mask. But they want us to mail in our votes. That I find that very suspect.